5 most haunted medieval prisons that still terrify the world. Imagine stepping into a place where the air itself feels heavy with centuries of suffering, where every shadow seems to whisper, and every gust of cold wind feels like the touch of something that should not exist. These are not merely ruins of the Middle Ages. They are prisons, drenched in blood and sorrow, where the cries of the condemned still echo long after their bodies have turned to dust. The medieval world was ruled by iron and fear. Behind stone walls and iron bars, kings silenced rivals, inquisitors punished heretics, and ordinary men and women vanished into darkness, never to return. Torture was routine. Death was expected. And when agony lasted long enough, when injustice piled too high, it left behind scars that even time could not erase. Some say those scars became spirits restless, tormented, and unwilling to let go. Visitors to these ancient dungeons speak of chains rattling in empty corridors, of disembodied voices weeping in the dark, and of ghostly figures gliding where no living soul dares to stand. Skeptics may dismiss them as legends, but when you stand inside these prisons, with walls damp from centuries of tears, even disbelief begins to tremble. Tonight, we open the gates to history's most terrifying prisons. These are not just stories of bricks and stone. They are stories of haunted memories, lingering souls and shadows that refuse to die. Join me as we descend into the 5 most haunted medieval prisons that still terrify the world. Prison 1. The Tower of London, rising above the Thames, with its grim stone walls and watchful turrets. The Tower of London is more than just a fortress. It is a monument to fear. Built in the 11th century, quickly became infamous not only as a royal stronghold, but as one of the most dreaded prisons in all of Europe. To be sent to the tower was to be marked by doom. Few who entered its gates ever left alive, and those who did carried scars that never healed. Within its walls, torture was refined into a cruel art. The dreaded rack stretched victims until joints snapped and screams filled the night. The scavenger's daughter crushed bodies into grotesque shapes, squeezing life out of the condemned. Chains rattled in dark chambers where spies, traitors, and even queens awaited their fate. The stones themselves seemed to pulse with the agony they once absorbed. But it is not only history that haunts the tower, it is the dead. Visitors claim to have seen pale figures wandering its courtyards, heard whispers in locked rooms, or felt unseen hands brush against them. The most famous ghost is Anne Boleyn, the tragic second wife of King Henry VIII, who was executed within the tower grounds in 1536. Witnesses tell of her headless spirit drifting near the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, where her body lies buried. Others report shadowy nights, spectral children, and eerie cries echoing through the bloody tower. The Tower of London is not merely a relic of England's past, it is a place where past and present collide. Step inside, and you walk not only through centuries of royal power, but through corridors still stalked by those who never truly left. A prison once feared by the living has become a fortress ruled by the dead. Prison 2, Château de France, just off the coast of Marseille. Rising from the waves like a grim sentinel stands the Château d'If. At first glance, it is breathtaking, an imposing fortress on a rocky island surrounded by restless waters. But beauty is a cruel disguise. Within its thick stone walls, the Château d'If became one of France's most dreaded prisons, a place where hope was drowned as surely as the tides that crashed against its cliffs. Built in the 16th century, it was intended to guard the harbor, yet its purpose shifted quickly. The fortress became a cage for political enemies, religious dissenters, and those unfortunate enough to anger the crown. Cells carved into cold stone offered no light, no warmth, no escape. Prisoners were left to rot, their voices swallowed by the ocean winds. Many died nameless and forgotten, their bones claimed by damp earth and salt air. But death was not the end here. The suffering of centuries lingers in whispers carried across the water. Visitors claim to hear chains clinking deep inside the fortress, even when no one is there. Shadows move along the walls of empty corridors, and voices murmur in the dead of night, as though prisoners still beg for release. The Shadow Dief is forever tied to stories of escape made, famous by Alexandre Dumas in The Count of Monte Cristo. Yet for every imagined triumph, countless real prisoners perished without freedom. Some say their souls still linger, watching from the battlements, pacing the cells, condemned to an eternity of unrest. Today the fortress stands silent, its cannons mute, its dungeons empty. But if you step onto that lonely island, sea breeze carries more than Saltic carries the despair of those who once cried out, unheard in the Chateau d'If. Prison 3, Poveglia Island, Italy. Venice, in the misty waters of the Venetian lagoon, lies Poveglia, an island so steeped in death that even the bravest fear to set foot upon its soil. To the casual eye, it is a crumbling ruin hidden behind veils of fog. But to those who know its history, Poveglia is no island at all, it is a graveyard. During the Middle Ages, Poveglia became a dumping ground for the victims of the Black Death. Barges filled with plague-ridden bodies were ferried to its shores, where they were thrown into pits and set ablaze. The air itself seemed poisoned with ash and rot. Thousands upon thousands of souls met their end here, their cries swallowed by fire and plague. And when the disease returned, so too did the island's grim purpose. By some estimates, over 100,000 lives ended in torment upon this cursed land, yet the horror did not stop with pestilence. In later centuries, Poveglia was transformed into a place of confinement, a madhouse, where the unwanted were hidden away. Tales speak of a cruel doctor who experimented on the inmates, drilling into their skulls in search of twisted cures. He is said to have been driven mad by the voices of the dead, until one night he leapt from the bell tower. Some claim they still hear his screams carried on the wind. Today the island is abandoned. The ruins of its asylum and bell tower crumble, consumed by ivy and silence. But silence is deceiving. Visitors whisper of ghostly figures moving among the ruins, of shadows lurking where the living cannot tread. Even fishermen steer clear, refusing to cast nets in waters said to be filled with restless spirits. Poveglia is more than haunted, it is saturated with death. To walk its soil is to tread upon ashes, and to breathe its air is to inhale centuries of despair. Few dare to stay after nightfall, for when the sun sets, the island wakes. Prison for the Conciergerie, France, Paris on the banks of the Seine. Where the waters reflect the glittering lights of Paris, stands a fortress of shadows, the Conciergerie. Its Gothic towers and stone facade may appear noble, but within its walls lies a legacy of despair. Once a royal palace, it became one of the most dreaded prisons of medieval and early modern France. For those condemned within, the Conciergerie was not a place of waiting. It was a final stop before the blade of the guillotine or the cold hand of execution. Even in the Middle Ages, whispers of suffering clung to its dungeons. Prisoners were kept in damp cells with little light, surrounded by filth, rats, and the stench of decay. The cries of the accused echoed through stone corridors, blending with the toll of church bells outside. Nobles and peasants alike found themselves shackled in darkness, awaiting judgment that was almost always death. During the French Revolution, the Conciergerie reached its most infamous chapter. It became the holding place for thousands of men and women marked for execution. Among them was Queen Marie Antoinette, who spent her final days in a narrow cell, stripped of dignity, before being led to the guillotine. It is said her spirit still lingers, pacing the stone floors in silent sorrow. Her presence felt as a sudden chill or the faint rustle of silk in empty corridors. Visitors and guards alike have reported strange sights, ghostly figures drifting across the halls, faint whispers rising from locked cells, and the overwhelming sense of being watched by eyes that no longer exist. The weight of so many deaths, thousands of souls cut short seams, pressed into every stone. Today, the conciergerie stands as a museum of justice and terror. But as you walk beneath its vaulted ceilings, past the cold remnants of its cells, history does not feel distant. It breathes on your neck. It lingers in your ears. The conciergerie is not just a relic of blood-soaked Paris. It is a prison where shadows of the condemned still walk beside the living. Prison 5, Castel Sant'Angelo, Italy, Rome rising along the banks of the Tiber. Crowned with a bronze angel spreading its wings, the Castel Sant'Angelo appears almost majestic. Yet beneath its noble facade lies a history steeped in blood and chains. Built in the 2nd century as the mausoleum of Emperor Hadrian, it transformed across the centuries into a fortress, a papal refuge, and most chilling of all, a prison that devoured countless souls. In the medieval era, the Castel's lower chambers became dungeons for heretics, traitors, and enemies of the papal states. The walls were thick, the air damp, and the cells buried so deep that sunlight never touched them. Prisoners were lowered into pits with no hope of escape, their pleas muffled by the stone that entombed them. Torture was not uncommon. The fortress concealed rooms where the condemned were stretched, starved, or suffocated, until silence claimed them. But the silence did not last. Visitors and guards whispered of strange noises rising from the lower levels, chains dragging across stone. Anguished cries echoing through passages long abandoned. Some spoke of shadowy figures drifting along the corridors, as if prisoners still sought an exit they never found. Legends tell of Benvenuto Cellini, a Renaissance sculptor who escaped the Castel's clutches, claiming he felt unseen presences trailing him as he fled. Others say the souls of papal enemies executed on its grounds still wander the ramparts, restless and vengeful. Today, tourists climb its spiraling ramps, admire its views of Rome, and marvel at its grand halls. Yet in the depths of the Castel, beneath the angel's watchful gaze, the air grows cold. Those who linger too long in the dungeons report an undeniable weight pressing on their chest, as though unseen eyes demand remembrance. The Castel Sant'Angelo stands as both monument and mausoleum, its angel a guardian, not only of the living city, but of the countless restless spirits that still drift within its stone heart. From the damp cells of the Tower of London to the cursed soil of Poveglia, from the shadowed halls of the conciergerie to the stone heart of Castel Sant'Angelo, we have walked through prisons where the line between history and haunting has all but vanished. These places were not only cages of flesh and bone, but vaults of agony, where every cry carved itself into the walls, and every death birthed a ghost. Centuries later, the echoes remain, a chilling reminder that suffering never truly fades. It lingers, watching, waiting. But tonight's journey is more than a descent into fear. It is also a reflection on the human past. These prisons remind us of cruelty, of injustice, of the way power once wielded terror as a weapon. And yet, they also remind us that stories live on, that even shadows demand to be remembered. If you felt the weight of these haunted histories, I invite you to keep walking with us into the darker corners of the past. Subscribe to Dark History Archive and join our growing community of seekers who dare to look where others turn away. And if this tale sent shivers down your spine, share it with friends. Let them step into the dungeons too. Thank you for watching, and remember, the past is never truly silent. Sometimes it still speaks in whispers through the night.